The iconic Real Time with Bill Maher intro music faded out as the studio lights settled on the sharp, skeptical smirk of Bill Maher. Dressed in his usual black blazer, Maher leaned on his desk like a professor waiting to dissect his next guest. His monologue had unsurprisingly been laced with anti-MAGA sarcasm and jabs at conservatives. The audience, as expected, chuckled in sync. And now, Shabao, he announced, please welcome someone who proves Gen Z isn't just for TikTok and cancel culture. Karoline Leavitt, the youngest White House press secretary in history, and definitely the boldest. Polite, performative applause followed as Karoline walked on set. Calm, confident, and clad in a tailored cobalt suit, she smiled with the cool precision of someone who knew she was entering enemy territory, and didn't mind at all. They shook hands, Mayor's eyebrows slightly raised. Well, Karoline, he started, you've made quite a name for yourself. Trump supporter, anti-woke crusader, Twitter warrior. Do you sleep in red, white, and blue pajamas, or is that just for TV? Laughter. Cheap one. She smiled. I sleep well knowing I stand for truth in a time when most people are afraid to speak it, she replied smoothly. But the flag's a nice touch, thanks for noticing. The audience gave a scattered chuckle, not quite sure whose side they were on yet. Maher leaned in. But truth, Karoline, is a tricky word, isn't it? Your side has truths about elections, vaccines, and climate change that just happen to contradict, well, science, law, and common sense. Karoline didn't flinch. Bill, truth used to mean objective facts. Now it means whatever the media and bureaucrats want you to believe. We didn't change the meaning, your side did. Maher blinked. The audience quieted. He shifted gears. But come on, you're a smart woman. You don't really believe there was a stolen election, do you? Karoline crossed one leg calmly. I believe asking questions isn't a crime. I believe big tech, mainstream media, and government colluded to control what Americans saw, heard, and believed in 2020. That's not democracy. That's narrative control. Mayor sat back. You're good. I'll give you that. Karoline tilted her head slightly. I came here for a real conversation, not a comedy roast with extra lighting. The crowd let out a murmur, part laughter, part admiration. Maher tried to reset. Okay, but let's be honest, your views are controversial, even dangerous in some circles. Abortion bans, border crackdowns, rejecting DEI. What makes you think your generation will follow you instead of mocking you on TikTok? She leaned forward slightly, tone measured and lethal. My generation is broke, depressed, over-medicated, drowning in student debt, and being told by liberal elites that everything is racist or transphobic. They're not laughing, they're waking up. It landed like a slap across a smug room. The audience was stunned into silence, not offended but taken off guard. Karoline sat back, cool and composed. Maher chuckled, unsure whether he was losing or just being outplayed, and that was only the first 10 minutes. Bill Maher adjusted his posture and narrowed his gaze, trying to regain control of the room. Karoline Leavitt had arrived with the calm confidence of a seasoned gladiator, and every jab he'd thrown so far had been effortlessly returned. The crowd, usually synchronized in Maher's rhythm, was now offbeat, hesitant to cheer, curious to listen. He cleared his throat. Let's talk Trump, he said, his tone suddenly serious. You worked with him, you defend him, but he's chaotic, thin-skinned, often unhinged, and let's be honest, more obsessed with himself than the country. Why stand by that? Karoline smiled. Because chaos doesn't scare me. Lies do. The media painted Trump as a villain because he refused to play their game. But behind closed doors, I saw a man who fought for working Americans while the establishment laughed at them. Bill shook his head. Yeah, but he's not exactly a role model, is he? She didn't hesitate. You don't need a role model, you need a fighter. I'd rather have someone rude who gets results than someone polished who sells us out to China with a smile. The audience gasped, half in agreement, half in disapproval, but all were paying attention. Maher chuckled. So that's the bar now? Results over character? Karoline leaned in. The left talks about character while burning cities, censoring dissent, and sexualizing kindergarten curriculums. Forgive me if I don't buy your moral lectures. The studio cracked with tension. Even Maher raised both eyebrows. Wow, he said softly. You came loaded. I came prepared, she replied. He nodded slowly. All right, let's go further. You're vocal about being pro-life. You don't believe in gender fluidity. You support the Second Amendment. Basically everything the New York Times calls dangerous. Why do you cling to values that your generation has largely rejected? Karoline straightened up. Because my values didn't come from Twitter. They came from truth. I believe a baby is a life. I believe men and women are real biological categories. And I believe that if the government can disarm its people, it can enslave them. A hush fell over the room. Maher ran a hand through his hair. You do realize you sound like a Fox News monologue, right? Karoline didn't flinch. That's because I'm saying what most people think and are too scared to say. Not everyone lives in a blue-check echo chamber, Bill. He smirked. You know, you're fearless. I'll give you that. I have to be, she said, because if I weren't, people like you would talk over me, label me, and hope I disappear. The applause came, not from all, but from enough, and it wasn't ironic. It was real. Maher shook his head slowly. You're dangerous, he said, half joking, half admitting. Karoline smiled. Only if you're used to getting away with your hypocrisy. For the first time in a long while, Bill Maher looked like the one answering the questions. And Karoline Leavitt, the young conservative firebrand, was winning. As the credits rolled on real time with Bill Maher, the studio lights dimmed, but the energy in the room was electric. Karoline Leavitt stood up gracefully, thanked the crew, and exited the stage with an air of composed victory. Not boastful, not smug, but unmistakably triumphant. Backstage, Maher removed his mic and exhaled audibly. Well, he muttered to his producer, she didn't flinch once. She filleted you, the producer replied, half joking, and she did it smiling. Maher chuckled dryly, rubbing the back of his neck. I thought I was interviewing another firebrand with talking points. Turns out I was interviewing a flamethrower with discipline. Meanwhile, Karoline walked through the studio corridor, phone in hand, already buzzing. Twitter, now X, was ablaze. Trending #1 had Leavitt vs. Maher. Trending #2, /Karoline crushes. Real-time trending #3. Truth isn't offensive. A quote clip already approaching 2.1 million views in under an hour. Right-wing commentators were praising her bravery. Even center-left personalities were forced to admit it. You don't have to agree with her, but she just owned that room. Karoline Leavitt is what Gen Z actually looks like outside of Brooklyn and LA. Bill Maher met his match. More surprisingly, Rolling Stone posted a headline. Karoline Leavitt shocks real-time audience with calm, unshakable conservatism. On Fox, Hannity replayed her quote about rude leaders versus polished traitors on loop. On CNN, Van Jones said cautiously, she's sharp. She doesn't play victim. That's dangerous in politics because it's effective. Truth isn't offensive, it's just louder than the lies we've been told. It had 40,000 retweets in the first 2 hours. Later that night, Maher sat alone in his dressing room, reviewing clips with a glass of wine. He paused when she responded to his question about clinging to outdated values. He rewound it, watched again. Because my values didn't come from Twitter. They came from truth. He leaned back slowly, eyebrows slightly raised. No one's going to forget that line anytime soon, he whispered to himself. Meanwhile, Karoline's inbox was flooded. Interview requests, college invites, podcasts, even a private message from Elon Musk with a rocket emoji and the words, damn, impressive. She'd walked into one of the toughest liberal strongholds on television and walked out a national phenomenon. Not because she yelled, not because she flattered the host, but because she told the truth, unapologetically. And even the people who hated it couldn't look away.